I hit the wrong thing.
What?
Sorry. I hit the wrong
So,
thing.
what do you need to do to?
I'm trying to set you up so that you can share the screen, Antonio.
Okay.
If anybody else
So
can do it fast, go for it.
I just
the
checked the box. Go ahead, Antonio.
There you go.
And where do I click now? I don't know. It happened all the time. Where is the button to share the screen?
It should be.
Yeah. It's in a big window saying share the screen.
We see your screen. But you are muted, Antonio.
Okay. So if I share
Zoom
the
does this. Zoom does this thing sometimes where it assumes if you're projecting your screen is going to make noise, and you're not. So you have to like change the setting there.
See your screen, but you are muted.
I cannot.
Now we got
Yeah,
you.
that.
Yeah,
There you
sure.
go.
Can you see the screen? No, it's paused.
Yes. No, we can.
Yeah,
see
we
the
can-
screen.
Yes.
Yep, we're all good.
And
Well,
it's free.
move something. It's frozen, maybe.
Yeah, it's saying that it's frozen. Stop share, resume share. What?
Now you're muted again.
Whoops. There, something's moving now.
Now?
It's moving and you're unmuted.
Yep.
Okay.
We seem to be in the
Good.
go.
Okay, this is the thing is I never used to have much contact with load balancer. Recently, I have a lot of contact with load balancer. So, and we don't have any way of testing load balancer locally. So we are developing and we are practically blindly of if we have lucky and have a cloud provider, we can test against that, but it takes a lot of time and it's very, for me, it's very slow. So what I did is I created a cloud provider for Kind. Most of you know Kind, the Kubernetes SIG Network, Kubernetes in Docker that I work with Benjamin Elder. And basically, you create a Kind cluster. You set up the configuration to make it external. I already created the cluster, okay? And you can, okay, there is no pause here. You can run this cloud provider binary that I created, okay? The cloud provider is going to connect to the cluster and is going to handle all the services, the load balancer and the instances. The instances is important because it's going to be useful for Dan Winship. He has a step to modify the node IP. So with this, you can. I want to see. With this, you can test the node IP thing. But the important thing for us here is the load balance. Okay. So what I created is logic to configure load balancer. And I have some examples that I want to show you. Okay. So let's apply first samples load balancer with ATP cluster. Okay. So it creates a load balancer. This here is it basically creates an HA proxy container and configures to with the data. So you can see the service. It has an external IP, and you can connect to. Okay, so you can see it already. First name, and I have and it also this is cluster mode. So in cluster mode, you can see that it's taking a different client IP. You can deploy a local mode. If it be local, we are going to have another service. Now is the 8.6, and we can see. So this is an HA proxy, so it's a load balancer type mode proxy. So the source IP is the source IP of the load balancer. Okay, I'm working on having a direct route proxy, but this is going to be in the next version. Okay, and what else can we do here? So, for example, testing the. I used this to test the new feature that undo cycling with terminating endpoints created. So this, let me clear. Okay. So you can see that it's super fast to have load balancers. So, and let me demo you the terminating endpoint feature. So this deploys a stateful set with 2 pods. We are running. Okay, let's see the service. Okay, is this one, the 8.5, and we want to see the host name here. Okay, you can see that it's going up now, and now we are going to restart the deployment, and we have to have 0 downtime. We are restarting, so you can see the Apache one is terminating. It has the deployment has a grace period, and the application has it's catching the SIG term and still serving, so it's not dying. And you can see that now that this is terminating, this is forwarding only for the Apache 0. You see, this should go away soon. And the load balancer is using external traffic policy local, is able to catch the health check and identify the node without any disruption. Okay, and now the 0 has to roll out, and we see that now the health check is failing. The load balancer moved Apache 0, but it's still rolling out. But all the traffic is being forwarded to the healthy pod, and now we have the rollout with 0 disruption tested in less than 5 minutes. Okay, and since I mentioned it, this can be used for run E2E tests. So you can write your E2E tests, the ones that we have in I created one for this demo because Dan Williams has an item to talk about that later. But you can run an E2E test and you can see that it's going to pass too. So you need to check. So this gets the load balancer, test the load balancer, check that it works, and now it's going to wait for the service to disappear. Okay, so it can take some time. And that's it. So there are no excuses to test load balancer features now.
Cool, man.
And I don't know. This is going to improve a lot
This
the
is
flaky
so
base, honestly.
this is so overdue. Like, you just earned yourself another community award.
No. This is
for your
service. I
wall.
need it.
Yeah, but you're wallpapering your house with these community awards. So this is awesome, Antonio. Does this now become the default CI integration? So the E2E CI runs no longer take 45 minutes waiting for load balancers? Did we lose you?
Is he still
There
here?
you go.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, he lost his audio.
No,
There you go.
the user experience of Zoom. I don't know who is putting the buttons because I clicked the one that kicked me out. So yes, the idea is to have. I mean, we neglected a lot the load balancer testing, and the idea is to have everybody that wants to do something to have something, and I plan to add some jobs to the CI. And I'm happy to have, I don't know, 1 hour or set up a meeting if people is more interested in how to debug this test, how to add this test. But
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the truth is, I remember going through all of the load balancer EDE test cases and massively adulterating the tests and bringing them all into one big test case because it just took too damn long to actually test them in a clean way where the test cases did one thing. It would be wonderful to undo that.
and that's the point. That's the next point from Dan Williams. I mean, current state is a no-go, and with this, I think that at least we can have a general test for load balancers that everybody should be able to support. Okay, that's my point. Then I don't have anything else. So
Very cool. Thank you, Antonio.
over to Jen.
All right, Dan, talking about E2E tests that depend on cloud provider features.
Yeah, so I think this test showed up in Cube 126. And so we rebased OpenShift and then started running CI in AWS. And it turns out that this test fails because the default load balancer implementation for AWS is ELBs. They don't support UDP. There needs to be an annotation placed on the service to make it an NLB, which does support that. But the E2E tests obviously don't put that custom annotation on because it's AWS specific. And the cloud provider for AWS itself doesn't automatically set that annotation either. And so the guidance that I got from some people was that the user needs to put that annotation on when they know that they want an ELB. And it seems kind of gross to make an end-to-end test do that when I think they should be fairly generic. So the question is really about like, what kind of guidance do we have here for things like this? Do we just skip that EDE test on AWS, or do we try to push back and say AWS cloud provider should automatically figure out that the service is a UDP and therefore make it an NLB instead of an ELB? Has anybody else found problems like this in the end-to-end tests before, and what do we do to solve them?
Go ahead, Antonio.
Yeah, let me give you a bit more of context here. So these E2E tests in load balancer were always there. The thing is that I was cleaning up and refactoring, and suddenly people started to pick them in their automation. So this is my fault. And when I talked with Benjamin and Aaron and other people in C testing, in theory, the E2E test should not have anything hardcore. I mean, should not have, this is AWS, this is everything, this behaves this way. So every test should be agnostic. But the reality is that it's not. So basically what I think we should do is to move this test to be more agnostic and remove all the tests that have these particular things. If AWS doesn't support these tests, I don't know.
I mean, the simple thing is we just remove AWS from the platform list because the test already has a skip if platform is not, GCE, AWS, something else.
Is UDP not conformance?
No, the load balances are not conformant.
Oh, that's right, of course.
But that's the thing in SIG Network and when we went with the KPMG and the thing, we have this gap. I mean, conformance is very wide. It's basically you run everything, and if it has an API server, it's basically conformant. But in SIG Network we have these things. And then we wrote this document. What is a standard proxy? And I think we should start moving to this conformance network thing and have our test and tag them and tell people, well, you want to be SIG network conformance, that's another conformance, you need to pass this test. I don't know. People agree on that. For example, Node has node conformance that are their conformance.
Okay, so for Dan's problem, what can we do? What are some of the actions we can take for this one?
Yeah, no, that if the test runs in AWS and AWS doesn't support, we need to skip. Just afterward.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that, Antonio. You said
I didn't catch that either.
we need to work.
If
Oh,
the
skip.
test, yeah,
Okay.
what's the point of running a test that always fails?
I mean, theoretically, it would pass if something set the right annotation to select an NLB. I guess
Yeah, but
you could ask the AWS cloud provider to do that. Yeah, I think there are some like cost differences between NLB and ELBs, and so maybe that's why they don't do it automatically.
But I remember the discussion around multi-protocol load balancers, right? And like, if the user is asking for it, they're asking for it. And I used to think, oh no, we shouldn't spend the user's money if they asked for something and maybe didn't realize what they're asking for. But I think it was Bridget who made arguments that convinced me, like, they're asking for it. And it's not that they don't know what they're asking for. They're specifically asking for something. EDE, I mean, the test is an interesting situation. I do think it'd be worth asking the folks who own the AWS cloud provider, like, hey, why don't you support this without the annotation? If the user specified UDP, they pretty clearly want UDP. You should do the thing you need to do to make UDP work.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Especially considering it's not a compatibility issue, right?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, like I don't know if it actually does work with NLBs because we didn't get as far as hacking things up to set that annotation. But
there's nobody here from the AWS team. Just curious.
They do come regularly to SIG cloud provider, so maybe we should get this on their agenda, the SIG cloud provider agenda. I mean, that one's every 2 weeks. It just happened yesterday.
But what we should not do is to do forking on the test to behave differently, depending.
I agree.
On
all of these run if platform stuff are all like smells. We should have as few of those as possible.
Well, in this case, like we can run this test on the platform. It's just there needs to be another layer of like platform grossness if we wanted to try to solve an EDE test. But I agree. I don't think that's a place where it should be solved.
Okay, Dan, are you okay with the idea of just like following up at cloud provider on this one?
Yeah. I can ask the. I think there have been some conversations already with people who are involved in cloud provider, and that's where like the current AWS guidance thing came from because somebody at Red Hat had asked about it. But I'll circle back with those people and give them the our thoughts here and follow up.
Sounds good. Do we think that we want to
I will
also create an issue?
I don't know about an issue, but I will put an item on their agenda for their next meeting.
I didn't mean for them. I'm sorry. I meant an issue for potentially trying to make these tests, like trying to pull away from having tests that are doing something this specific, getting into more generic tests. Is that something that we're tracking? Seems like a few people mentioned an interest in that.
I mean, now that we have an ability to do load balancers that isn't linked to a cloud provider, it seems like I wouldn't want to get rid of the tests.
Right.
But knowing maybe they don't run in, I don't know. I feel like it would be retrograde motion to not test this. I wasn't even aware that the AWS doesn't support it out of the box. Like that is surprising to me.
The test, definitely we are going to have a test that is create a load balancer with a service type UDP and connect to it, and it's going to fail in the AWS because we need that test, right? You create a service load balancer with an UDP port and you connect to it. What I'm saying is, moving forward, this test that we have right now, we cannot, this test needs to be, all of them need to be refactored. But moving forward, we want to have more agnostic tests. And one of these tests is going to be, I want to create a service load balancer and expose a UDP service. And this test is going to fail in AWS, right?
Oh, I was typing live there, wasn't I? I'm happy to take on an action item of following up with Antonio asynchronously, and we can talk about whether or not we're tracking this desire to make the test more agnostic. How does that sound? And maybe create an issue for it after talking with Antonio about it. Does that sound good?
No, that's a fact. All the load balancer tests, I'm going to create them agnostic.
Oh, you are going to do it. Okay, it's happening.
Yeah. I mean, that thing that we have now is what we have now is a no-go. I mean, those tests are bad.
Okay, my bad. I just misunderstood what you were saying.
No, what I'm saying is, in the next scenario is we're going to do an agnostic test, and this agnostic test is going to fail in Amazon, but we are not going to skip it because. So what we want to do with that?
Gotcha. So just there's an open question. So was I maybe thinking I was wrong, but I was right about what I was thinking originally, that we should just follow up asynchronously on this one and kind of come up with a plan for next time about what we're going to do, because we are kind of running a little short on time and somebody else wants to go. Can I follow up with you asynchronously, Antonio? Sound good? Okay. Okay. MSK Rocky.
That's me, Maciej. Yeah, this is just a follow-up on, I think, from two meetings before about the naming. I did create the poll survey for our multi-network object that we want to use. Please just follow up, and if you can just select your preferences. On the description on the top, you have some links to the requirements PR of what the object has to be, what we plan to do with it. So please go ahead and fill it up. I'm gonna keep this up for the next week and then gonna close it up. So I did advertise that in Slack, in SIG Network in Slack, but I think that it picked up too much. But so bring it up here. Please fill it up. Right, that's all.
Cool, thanks, Maciej. All right. I guess we can go back up and get back to a couple of backlog grooming issues then. I had one I don't know that is super great. But this one was, I think the main reason I picked it was just because it seemed old. So basically the idea is here that there's a potential bug at some point where we thought upgrading into a cluster with IPv6 would cause things to break with endpoint slices because they're not keeping track of all the references to service or the Kubernetes service, API server service. It left off with Dan saying, we'll end up fixing this. So I just thought we'd check in on this one and see, like, is this actually moving, or is it kind of stuck in the position that it's in? Is there anything to say about this one?
So as far as I know, this does not affect any existing clusters. This is just a bug that would pop up if we added dual stack support without fixing it first.
Roger that.
And the whole dual stack API server thing is kind of stalled because I keep working on other things. And I actually have 2 pending PRs right now, reorganizing the API server's endpoint slice reconciler, but nobody ever reviews them. So I need to poke people on API server team to review my PRs, but.
Cool. So this is just a blocker, and it is moving in that it's not completely frozen. let's move on to Bridget's then. These are
Yes,
issues that,
sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah, so I clicked that one because it was the life cycle frozen one. I thought it might be nice since Tim brought that up for us to, ooh, and it already went down from 35 or so to 28, which means Tim has been clicking ferociously in the background. But yeah, I figure maybe just for the next couple of times we do the screaming, having this link handy to be like, these are the ones that are sitting there saying frozen for sure. This 5-year-old thing is something we want to freeze forever, question mark. So yeah, maybe we can grab 1 or 2 of these and go, let's reevaluate this. Excellent, Dan. Thank you for unfrozening one. I feel like we need a soundtrack to that. Let it go. Let it go.
I think you just gave us the soundtrack.
Service spec external IP should not allow duplication.
And if you just jump to the end,
External IPs now accept inherently.
we
ahead.
sort of gave up on trying to make external IPs work. So I feel like we can just close this now. Tim?
I agree. Even if we didn't do that, changing it so that they're not duplicated would be a breaking change. And
Well, like in theory, we could, write some awesome controller that, did cool stuff, but
we generally, as a rule, we don't modify user input. So if they gave us a list and it has a duplicate in it, our choices are accept it as it is or reject it as it is, but not mutate it.
right. I guess, yeah, I meant we do a larger scale rework. Like OpenShift has this old thing that you can have it automatically assign external IPs for you, and then it makes sure that it's doing it, in a way that the administrator configured and is happy with. So like in theory, we could do that, but we don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to spend a lot of design energy on external IPs. So kill it. Nuke it from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. I want to watch it turn purple.
That was an Aliens reference, right?
Yes.
It's from Aliens. Okay, cool. Do we want to look over any more of these? Or
Dan, do you want
just
to, sorry,
pick from
do
these
you
for
want to
next
do the,
time?
do you want to do the honors, Dan? Boom. Sorry,
Yeah, I just
I
did.
get excited about that. Close
Okay.
bugs, yay.
It is gone.
Jump all the way to the end. Let's look at the oldest ones.
Let's do it.
I just unfroze a few of them on the expectation that they would reappear in the triage queue eventually. Here's a good one.
A way to configure external IP addresses for a node with kubelet. Okay.
So, this gets into kubelet -- node IP behavior, which is theoretically SIG node, but really we end up always dealing with it. And I actually am working on that right now because we need cloud dual stack IPs. Basically every now and then people propose, oh, hey, we should be able to do this, but also nobody knows what having multiple external IPs is even for. Like nothing in Kubernetes actually cares about external IPs other than some of the EDE tests.
Gotcha. So this one is was not frozen anyway. It is underway. Okay.
Oh, should we
Should
unfreeze
we-
it?
Yeah, should we mark it as such?
I mean, there's still no agreement on whether we actually want to do this, I guess.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. It sounded like you were already actively doing this.
I'm working on other node IP related stuff. So, if we were going to fix this, then I can roll this in, but.
Gotcha. So the question remains, do we actually want to do this? Does anybody have any opinions on the matter? We still have a few minutes left.
I'm still catching up, paging this one back in. It's old.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should just unfreeze it for the purpose of everybody, or it popping back up and everybody taking a look at it. Who needs to take a look at it?
I support that.
And about, hey, let's come to some kind of alignment here on whether or not we're actually going to do this.
We've got 4 minutes left. I don't suppose we have time to do one more.
I think we do. There was one really
That's
exciting
really
looking
simple.
one on the
Okay.
on the issue list. If you click back to the list of the lifecycle frozen issues, it's like, how big should Kubernetes scale? I feel like that's almost a philosophical discussion.
Infinite.
Like, but it's an interesting question. Do we plan to reevaluate setting some sort of constraints and or affordances to allow us Kubernetes to scale, and if so, to a different amount than people envisioned in July 2017? And go.
I'm not sure if we should, but if we do, I think that the limits should be backed up by tests. Maybe that's an obvious thing, but
So the problem with retroactively applying limits is there's certainly somebody out there who is one above that limit. And if we start enforcing, only like pick on something real, only 1,000 endpoints in an endpoints resource, and we don't have an alternate answer that's already implemented like endpoint slice, then somebody somewhere is going to come and beat us up, and we will deserve to be beaten. So I don't think we can put in place hard limits unless we think those hard limits are so big that nobody anywhere is possibly hitting them, like 1 million endpoints. And I don't think setting the limit at 1 million endpoints is particularly useful. I mean, 1 million is sort of indistinguishable from infinite, right? We can document it, and SIG scalability has sort of documented it in the form of the tests that they run, right? Like 5K node does, XYZ stuff, and that's what we certify.
Maybe this is not a question for SIG Network to make changes on, but it is a question for SIG scalability to say, this is what currently exists. And if people want to open issues to change what currently exists, cool, that's a different question.
But they
well,
already
it's saying
published.
services.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Antonio.
No, the SIG scalability already published the numbers.
Right.
which
And
the
do their
project
numbers
is
hit
testing.
services?
Well, services, yes, they have a limitation. I don't know if they have the number, but services has the limitation in services is in the allocator. I created I don't know how many thousand services, and each CD started to go down because the allocator size starts to grow. That's why we have IPv6 ranges with a cap on. But I can look this for you, but I know that they publish a number.
So what do we do with this one? It's a good question. And for context, the person who filed it, Shyam, was on the scalability effort back then. So it was really SIG scalability asking SIG Network, what do we think is the right number?
I am okay, and especially since we're at time, I'm actually interested in this a little bit. I'm okay with following up on this one and pulling in kind of the parties who have already been in here and see if like maybe this is just a documentation thing that we can resolve.
Excellent.
Okay. I unfroze it for you.
Dankeschön.
You want me to
All
send it
right.
to you?
Yeah, sure. I'll talk to Bowie about it too. He's on there. All right. So we are at time. If you have anything that you wanted to bring up, make sure you put it on the next 2-week out agenda. Thank you all very much. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.